turtle excluder and a bag of dead crabs. I mean, it was a shame they were dead, but a bag of crabs, and a number of them were what I would consider number one jimmies. And he took them and put them up to the turtle excluder, and none of them got through. And my point is, what you're doing here, if you say, for instance, recreational crabbers have to use these turtle excluders, you're saying to recreational crabbers, you no longer get into the number one jimmies when you're crabbing. And that's one of the frustrations I have with this. The other one is in 2021, when this did go to the commission for just recreational, Ken Neal did a speech, which I hope staff will provide to the commission if this comes up before them again, the verbatim speech, where he pointed out that by making it just a recreational, the commission would be breaking state code that says you have to treat the different sectors the same.
Do what now? I didn't hear all of that.
Ken Neal, when it came up before, it was because the people at the Monterey Bay
Yeah,
Aquarium.
I know all
That
about that.
one.
Yeah, we went all through it at the Marine Products Board level and everything.
Yeah, and the commission said, we have to do this so we can say we're doing something so that the commercial sector will benefit, was exactly what they said.
Now,
Not
see,
we need to-
Monterey Bay, we, still today, because of this, will not certify Virginia crab.
That's
meat.
right, but if we do this, then, and at the time, what it was said was, if we do this, then they will,
Yeah.
because we're doing something about it. Now, as the lone recreational crab representative on this committee, I have a lot of heartburn with the concept of all recreational crabbers have to do this. I think if we're going to do something with turtle excluders, we pick areas that are critical habitat for terrapins, not necessarily all creeks, critical habitats. I look at Plumtree Island as a critical habitat. The flats off of there are on either side of it. There's not that many people that crab on the outside of Plumtree Island because they haul there. That would be an area that you could say, we're gonna mandate turtle excluders in these waters when it's less than so many feet deep and blah, blah, blah. We could pick other areas that are critical habitat where the turtles actually have a place that they can lay eggs and such. Because most neighborhoods anymore, the shorelines are hardened so much that it's useless for the turtles for breeding.
Why can't you just require recreational people to check their pots? I mean, wouldn't that solve some of this?
No, the studies, and I don't know if it was Chambers and Mars, the study from New Jersey, one of their conclusions was they checked their pots twice a day when they did the study, and they said that if they had done it, and it was in in addition to reading it 10 years ago, it was in the package they sent us in the mail, in the email. If you waited to once a day to check your pots, the turtles could, well, a substantial fraction of the turtles would die. So the point is, saying the commercial potters check their pots every day is not a sufficient, we're gonna protect the turtles by doing this. You would have to say to recreational potters, like you do right now for gill nets, if you're gonna put it over, you gotta hang out there with it, so it's only out there for 6 or 8 hours, and you pull it back up. And that's not gonna happen, I mean, people do it off piers.
Mark? Yeah, on your slide, where you showed the states that have excluders, could you go back to that? Could you tell me what a narrow funnel is? Because it mentions that, a TED style, or style TEDs, or narrow funnel required. What's the narrow funnel?
Without having the South Carolina reg in front of me, I don't know.
It mentions that, 2 different times, I believe. Yeah, Florida also narrow funnels.
It's a different shape.
Do you,
I don't think I have a picture in here, but I can get you one.
yeah, I think that would be important for this. I mean, if that's acceptable, the narrow funnels, maybe, it would be acceptable to the recreational fishery.
So long as you can get a number one jimmy in it.
Well, my question, you're starting to talk about areas that we exclude and stuff like that. And you made a comment one time about Windhaven. And what you said the turtles were, because you're an expert in Windhaven, were exactly the opposite.
I'm not
ways.
an expert on Windhaven.
Yeah, you know.
I go around.
And you know, so who's to choose the areas in which we exclude?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not gonna let me, even though I certainly stay away from those areas because I know exactly where they're at, because I see them on a daily basis in the summertime. So, you know, and then the other thing is, we've had studies and it shows the problem, unfortunately, are the recreational fishermen, is that correct?
I mean,
Not so much the commercial?
it has to do with any kind of derelict or gear that's left longer. So in general, when commercial fishermen are fishing them every
I
day.
agree that one of the issues is recreational crabbers who put the crab pot off their pier and just leave it there for months.
Yeah, when I
Or
was a
don't
kid,
work there
I'd
anymore.
kick it off and check it like once a week, you don't care.
Well, no, if they're not gonna bait it, pull it out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, terrapins aren't attracted to commercial or recreational pots more, it's just a matter of the frequency in which they're checked. So a commercial water in general is out there every day, whereas a recreational may not be out there every
But
day.
they also
But hear what you're saying, Tom, about Ken's mentioning of the fact that we need to treat all fisheries the same, or all people who use the same fishery the same. But I do think in this case, recreational is recreational, and they're not as observant and demanding of what they do with regard to their pots. And I don't think it's a bad idea to say,
You're also talking about 5 or 10 pots versus a couple hundred you got to put these
Yeah.
things in.
Yeah.
I've said it before, I'll quit crabbing if I got to put them in mine, I don't care.
I think the main problem is with the TEDs, there's no standard to what size they need to be or what they need to be made out of, you know.
I think when they-
That's certainly gotta be established before you can require a TED in a recreational pot. The ones I bought, that I brought down to the commission meeting and all, they were the ones that were supplied at that time, and they were all plastic, you know. Then I see the ones from Delaware, they can be wire, so it's a lot of variances there in the sizes of the TEDs, so, I think that's something we would have to establish early on, you know.
I don't even see recreational pots for sale where I live anymore without the TEDs already in them, like Marshalls, Ace, Eddie Heath, all of them have them in there for them.
Yeah.
The ones at Pocosin don't have them.
And
also ones
the
that
new
live in-
peeler pots that Eddie Heath makes, the turtle can't even fit in the foam, because we've all gone to the all square wire. They're
Okay.
they can't go in there.
Right.
Maybe a baby one, but
Too small.
your average turtle, that's what everybody said, you can't even catch one.
so let's remember one thing, this is one of these petitions that you all have been getting. This is new, everyone. These petitions are something that conservatives, VMRFC hasn't really seen until the last couple of years.
Yeah, we have gotten, so petitions have always existed, it's the availability of rulemaking for the public. We have seen an increase in them, including in this one. This petition did go in front of the commission did unanimously deny it, but this is why we're here, the commission just, exactly what we're doing, just ask for some input and some feedback specific on these recreational
Right,
tanks.
so let's wrap up quickly, I think, here, because this is something that's not that important.
You know, when we went back in, I guess it was May or June, and the presentation was done for the petition, the main thing they said was derelict and recreational. And derelict gear, none of us want derelict gear because it costs us money in more than one way. And the recreational pots, I see them all the time, and we can all agree that I see them sitting on a dock, and they look, I wouldn't put that overboard, because that's not gonna catch crab, because they've left it over for 2 weeks. So the recreational pots are borderline derelict, the way they're maintained and hard, the amount of time they use them. So I would say that's, if we're gonna look at something, that's where our problem is, considering them more to be along the lines of derelict, with the guys that are putting them off their docks and leaving them. I'm down for the weekend, forgot about it, didn't come back next weekend, there it is for 2 weeks. That's where your problem's gonna come from.
But if it's overboard with a buoy on it and it's not tended, then it's illegal from a different regulation.
Yeah, but they don't enforce it. There are so many pots in Windhaven that are like that from recreational crabbers right now.
Why take up our enforcement time on that?
Couldn't find it if you tried.
Yes, sir, Mr.
I think this is the first first time we've seen the management areas discussed, in North Carolina. Do you know how big those areas are?
I don't know how big they are off the top of my head now.
It seems to me like if narrow funnels are acceptable, then maybe we should look at something like that. I saw, you know, rather than a hard,
Mhm.
because to me, that right there, and that's just, I'm talking just recreational, I'm not talking
Right.
commercial.
Okay.
So a lot of these are one or the other, not, we are only doing narrow funnels, so.
Yeah,
You speaking
you know.
of the size of the funnel,
Yeah,
funnel?
I tried to get her, I saw a picture, I was hoping.
9 mesh is the smallest one I've seen.
Yeah,
That's the
and I've
smallest
changed the
mesh.
funnels up. I use a Carolina funnel.
Yeah.
Okay, she can't send a link to me now. Okay, never mind.
From 9.
I'd have to go digging for it on their
Yeah.
webpage.
But what I'm looking at, I've got a picture of it.
And the narrow funnel probably wouldn't let in number ones either.
Yeah.
It's a restrictive size for terrapin.
So looking at the narrow funnel here on this picture, mine are 14 meshes around on the outside, which is Carolina style. And the narrow funnel here, the picture that I'm assuming is acceptable is 12 meshes, or I'm sorry, 11 meshes in diameter, which could possibly be similar to the funnel that you had.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that was a 10 mesh one, the one I had.
okay, so that right there would be considered a narrow funnel, according to what I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
So that might be, is that the funnel that you use or not?
Mhm.
So let's say,
Yeah,
what would
so
we suggest to the commission? Let's decide that.
Really, you don't have to, this committee doesn't have to make a motion or not motion. This is just information. I mean, we're gathering information right now just through the discussion. So there doesn't mean to be a definitive answer tonight that this committee thinks we should do this or we should do that. This is really information, so and feverishly writing, that this is the input we're looking for.
All right, yeah.
And then as far as like the petition goes, they can bring that petition back now, is that correct? Or do
Yes.
they have to wait?
Yes, yes.
So they could bring it back?
They could bring back the same petition. This one was for all pots.
Yeah.
They could bring back something similar for recreation. Yes, the answer is anyone can bring a
So
petition.
they can continue to take your valuable time when you could be looking at something different in fisheries, is how I look at it.
Sure.
It could, just, I hate to say this, the men-hate issue. Same thing, they're gonna keep bringing that back until something.
They could, and, you know, this,
One thing, Mark, on a square wide pot, 10 mesh is about as small a funnel as you put in there.
Yeah,
You can't get a 9 in a square wide, but you can't stretch it enough.
right, the
It's kind of in
Carolina,
between size, you know? And
Well-
I've had trouble with, when they had the bad wire, you stretch it to put it in, and then you secure it. And when you do that, you kind of break the galvanize up, and it won't last. You get a year out of a funnel or something, you'd have to replace the damn funnel.
yeah, now I'm just saying this, if it's acceptable,
Yeah,
you know, in my mind, it's better than the little square ring that.
oh,
you
yeah,
require,
yeah, I think so too, yeah.
You know,
Make,
so,
make a
I mean, I don't
smaller.
know how you feel about it.
size
You
funnel.
use crab pots enough to know.
It's a question of how big of a crab can you get into it?
Right.
And, you know, I think it would be a shame to say to recreational crabbers, you're gonna be, you go out crabbing, the best you'll do is a number 2.
Right, and I feel, you know, all user groups should be treated equal. I do agree with that, on every issue. Right
Yeah,
down
and-
from crabs to speckled trout and
And,
everything.
so, I would suggest that staff at least investigate so that the commission is making a decision based on data. If we were to pick some areas that we wanted to say, in these areas you will use turtle excluders. And these areas that are, call it critical habitat, not necessarily everywhere that they exist, but critical habitat and breeding areas for terrapins. And I think you could get that down to, you know, several areas, especially if you pick areas that they haul seine and use those, because there's a gear conflict with that, and in the summertime, the haul seiners don't want the crab pots in the same area.
no, it's very helpful, thank you.
All right, good deal. Does that kind of give
Yeah,
you
that's exactly what we needed, thank you.
Okay.
Just the one addition, some information about that North Carolina program, I think would be helpful.
Okay.
Which I think is kind of.
Yeah.
Dark sponge crab.
So before we go there, just a brief interlude, just want to show you quickly where the fishery is for this year compared to the last 2 years. I don't have October, November in yet. Those data are still very preliminary. But, you know, you can see that we had a low March. April, we did much better than 2024. A little bit into May. And then pretty much June through September, we've been a little low. But that table, all the way at the bottom, that's what percentage of crab pot licensees had reported at the time I pulled this data. So September, you know, we're still waiting on 16% of licensees to get their data in. So any of these numbers could go up, especially there. Just want to give you a quick idea where we are.
Pretty consistent through the summer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just, I put my math hat on and I say, okay, you got 92% in August, so that's 8% down. So if I take the 8% and add it to 1.8 million and put 8% on there, it gets up to about 2 million, 2.1 million maybe. So that's not such a bad thing compared to last year. I'm not saying last year was that great. But,
That's just why I'm cautioning the data's preliminary. You guys will see,
I'd love to see it compared to
by-
like 2000.
by our next meeting, you'll see this probably complete for the year.
Look at your, but Tom, to your point, look at your harvesters and your trips, all that's lower, so there should be lower harvest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but
if
it's-
you
it's
average
only-
it out,
it's only-
if you average it out, it's not much different, probably,
Yeah,
with math, if you put your math right in.
I go back saying the same thing I said last year, how many people participate?
Yeah,
You got
catch
more
per
people
unit effort
participate,
is a
you
good
catch more
metric
people.
to
You got
use.
less, you got less.
comparing year to year. So.
We try, but it's tough considering the different license categories. All right, so moving on. This discussion is to revisit a topic from May's meeting. The commission received a request to revisit the dark sponge law dates with respect to the sanctuary closures, and we just wanted CMAC's thoughts on it. We ran out of time at the last meeting, and we knew we had further information we wanted to get together, so we deferred the item until today. So this is an excerpt from the regulation pertaining to the dark sponge law. Unfortunately, in our harvest data, we get, hard crabs by sex, by number 1 jimmies, number 2s, but we don't get anything on sponged females. So we don't really know how many females with sponge are being caught, are being kept. So as kind of a stand-in, I put a request into VIMS for their juvenile trawl survey. Because when they go trawling and they're catching crabs, they do record not just if the crab has a sponge, but what color it is. And I believe they actually pick the colors to align with our rules. So, graph on the left is the percent of crabs by sex or egg stage in the main stem only. On the right is the tributaries only. As you can imagine, the brown and black bars are brown and black sponge crabs. Orange is orange sponge. Yellow is no eggs. Purple is the spent crabs. And then the blue are the males. So according to this data, when the sanctuaries close, that closes a lot of effort in the main stem. We hear a lot of times that it pushes a lot of effort into the tributaries. Once the effort goes into the tributaries, there aren't a lot of the brown and black crabs in there to be protected. There's June and July, there are some brown crabs, maybe even a few of the black sponges in July. But there may not be a big benefit to having the dark sponge law in place after the sanctuaries close. So the proposal was to end the dark sponge law once the sanctuaries close or alternatively on June 1st. I think that was the date we kind of were talking about in our last meeting.
And right now it goes into effect on the 15th.
Yes.
I don't see where there's an issue with changing it. That it should be done.
Can we have a vote on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Nixon.
Something that concerned me about this whole thing over the last, I don't know how many years, is we went through, way before most of you in management were here, we went through, different iterations of how to call crabs back in the day. And it mostly, centered at that time on the size of male crabs. And there were videos of people culling out of trash cans and totes and this, that, and the other. And what we had come up with after a period of time was that there'd be no culling at the dock. That's the problem, big problem that Marine Patrol had with it. People would come in and say, oh, I'm gonna cull them now. And if they didn't get caught, they probably didn't, or that's what the belief was. But it didn't center on black sponge crabs, because they were legal at that point. And we came up with the idea that you could keep 3 plastic fish totes of crabs uncalled in the boat. And somewhere along the line with all this black sponge law and everything, that went right out the window. And there was a section in the regulation put in, and you must cull your crabs immediately. And I remember we had a local crabber from Lynnhaven that was a commissioner at the time. And he seemed to think that you could do that. And I've had these discussions with the commissioner we have now, and he was crabbing at the time, and we were catching enough crab, you couldn't call them off fast enough to stay right there if you had 2 people calling crabs. And most of us at the time had 2 people crabbing and 1 person calling crabs. When the black sponge law came in, and I had crabbers that I talked to, they never cited me for it, that were given a ticket for leaving one line of pots and going to another with uncalled crabs while the guy's calling and they're going. They want to give him a ticket for not stopping immediately and culling crabs. And I didn't think that was correct. But that was the way the interpretation of the whole thing went. And mainly with this thing, I wanted to see some clarity put into the call law and bring it back to reality of what you actually have to deal with. And are you really saving anything when you force a crabber to do that? If he's only going from one side of the river to the other, you know, he's not leaving and going way up somewhere. What are you accomplishing? Every crab that you throw overboard has these 2 things on the back there called swim fins, and they're gonna go somewhere. He's not gonna leave it right where you put it, you know, overboard. What was the point? And I'd like to see that looked at, along with when we're gonna stop having them. We need to make a call law that you can live with, that's effective at what we were trying to accomplish. It's gotten way out of skew now, like so many other government regulations. And they're enforced sometimes arbitrarily, but they're written up like that. So I guess, you know, you can do what you could do. And a lot of officers have different opinions on it. So, that's human
Thanks,
nature.
Pete.
I'm not blaming anybody for the way they think. If they think that way, they probably have a reason for it. But, I hate the idea of, you know, sometimes I end up having, of course, I didn't crab at all this year, but having to, not have help and having to stop when the wind's blowing a gale and sit there and go through that box to satisfy some potential police officer that might come up then I'm really not doing anything to save the resource. You understand what I'm getting at?
And that's a stark sponge, if you find yourself more
Well,
than not
yeah,
producing.
because I was, I was way up the river by my house one day, and, I had just dumped a pot, and here come two officers, they both know me, and, they wanted to look at my stuff. So the first thing he does is he gets ready to stick his hand in my call box. I went, oh. I said, you can't check that. I just dumped in it. And he said, oh yeah, I saw you do it. Well, then he starts grading everything else. Well, why are they allowed to go right in your dump box where you just dump stuff in there? It's because of that word immediately, which was put in there. So you have to stop everything you're doing, no matter what the weather is, no matter where you are, no matter how rough or calm or hot it is or whatever, and call those crabs. And I call crabs for our business. I have 5 grades of crabs I have to call. I don't have 2. So I'm sizing every crab and grading them by sex and size. And it's, takes a minute. Not a lot, but it takes some time. And if I have to do that in the middle of a line of pots, I'm way off somewhere else. If the wind's blowing at all or the tide's moving. Nothing out there is static, it's moving. And it's inconvenient, to say the least. I would like to have that addressed at some point. It doesn't have to be tonight. We got all the way till next spring to figure it out. But that's a hindrance, an unnecessary hindrance. Whatever we come up with. Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Sanford, I think I'm.
Ron, would you object to June first on this?
To what?
To move it to June first, the date?
So here's what the data say, right? First of all, we've never addressed the issue that you just brought up, meaning what happens if you take the crabs and then you hold them on board the vessel for some distance. All the studies we did were to follow the exact protocol, which is that when you catch the crab, you cull them then and throw them overboard. So we don't know what kind of mortality might be due to that. I'm just gonna bring that up. Just in June, I wouldn't expect much, but in July and August is where.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. But I was sitting in a committee meeting in the legislature one year, this has been several years ago. And one of the fellows that was on that Chesapeake Tribs Committee was a farmer. And he was from way up the other way. And we're sitting here talking about this stuff, and he faces the same kind of situation with crops and everything else. And we got to laughing, because the first thing he does is we're talking about this stuff, and he said, let me ask you a question. He's asking this of a manager. He says, is the juice worth the squeeze? Well, that summed it all up, and that's the main question in all this. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah, so, just to repeat, what our data showed is that most of the mortality for crabs comes, when they're caught, whether it's a female bearing a sponge or not, is July, August. So June, if you put a crab back, it's likely to survive. Now, the one thing that I would say we would need to look at is to look at the trawl survey data, but look at it for the trips. Because what you showed was, okay, there's the trip. So if there aren't, I was looking at the one on the left side, okay. So on the trips, if there aren't many brown or black, I think you're right that it probably is not gonna make much of a difference, because most of the brown and black are already moving down into the bay, and they're gonna be hatching out the eggs down towards the lower bay. So with that data, I think I would be okay to just not have, the regulation.
And also the water temperature.
Starting in June.
The water temperature has warmed some also. If you look at the average over the last few years.
Yeah, that was, I'm
it's
glad you
obvious.
had that, 'cause like I said, I focused on the left panel.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right, it's, the squeeze isn't much.
And
Or no,
Well,
the juice
you know,
isn't, the juice isn't much, but the squeeze.
The period of
is
time
big.
I'm talking about, if you have somebody continually grading crabs, is the difference between immediately and 10 or 15 minutes, not hours. Suppose you buy
But I'll get a ticket for 15 minutes, I'll get a ticket for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
From leaving the end of one line and moving over to the first pot in another line, because I've left where I was.
Yeah, I think personally, I think that the spawning stock is gonna be better served by other types of actions, whether it's. the
Sure, I understand that, but how do
sanctuary.
we
But
write
no,
that?
no, so I'm saying that I think, I agree that, I don't think that it's necessary to require the June one. I think you can extend that so that the brown and black can be caught June one when the sanctuary's open. Sorry. when
See,
the
here's
sanctuary's closed.
here's the thing, most of the time when this is a problem, we're not down in the first area, we're in the other area.
Mid-area.
So your percentages have all changed.
Yeah,
And it's not
that's-
as critical,
Right.
but it's still the law.
Is it green?
So just to summarize, we would be supportive of removing that requirement that's from June, that in June you have to toss back brown and black sponges, as long as outside the sanctuary, based on that data there.
Okay.
What's the
That's a step.
current sanctuary closing time? Is it 15?
He said he'd be okay with.
It varies.
Yeah, it depends where.
I got it, go ahead.
So, Rom's in agreement with June first. It says here, in June and July, that they have a 30 to 40% mortality compared to 98% survive in May. So we know they're gonna die more in June. And when we're sponge crabbing, for the guys of us to do it, we're not getting a big market price for them. We're working on volume. So we are looking for 20, 30 crabs to the pot. You got that many in there, even overnight, they've destroyed the bait and they're going after each other somewhat. So there's stress on them as well. I know we talked about this a little bit last time, and in y'all's surveys, y'all had 10, 12 crabs to the pot. You know, when y'all are checking on your mortality rates. That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing 10, 12 crabs to the pot sponge crab, and we ain't doing very well.
No, you pick your pots up
We're
and you
moving it
move.
going somewhere else. So these crabs are being stressed and have a higher percentage probably than this 30, 40 in our commercial environment to die. So let's go with Rob's suggestion here, and let's go to June first on this one.
I'm
For those guys.
supporting it, not suggesting.
No, I mean, I'll let you make the motion.
Sanctuary closed in the Middle Bay while y'all crab.
In the Middle Bay is May 15th. The lines runs just above Windmill, kinda to the northeast
Mhm.
is where June first comes in.
Over to the eastern shore.
Yeah.
Same thing down.
Correct.
I got you.
And it leaves a hole up there around Tangier for you guys.
So,
We got that.
Ron,
I'll
what
make a
you're
motion
saying-
yet, or no?
Excuse me?
Do you wanna hear from the public at all?
Yeah, let's see if we've kind of settled out here. Is everybody sort of
Two things.
okay, Tom?
The first thing is, the main stem of the bay also includes the waters between the edge of the sanctuary and the shoreline, which I wish we had real pictures of the sanctuary up here so we could talk about it, but do you have one of those slides? So there is an area, first off, I support it. But I just would like to point out that there is an area, for instance, to the left of the sanctuary here, all along the shore going up to Newport News and York River, Coast River and all that, and along the shoreline on the eastern shore, on the bay side of the eastern shore, where you will get black sponge crabs in relatively large numbers, I would expect. But the majority of them are in the protected sanctuary, so that's why I say I support this.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Studies were already done about that in
Yeah.
2003.
Yeah.
And most crabs that are egg bearing are 10.7 meters
Yeah.
of depth.
Yeah, so that's fine with that. On the culling, how long does it take you to work a line of pots before you're gonna move to the next line? From the time you start till the time you
It
say.
all depends on how long it is. Sometimes they're long, sometimes they're not.
I mean, is it 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever? Because then you can say, from the time you start putting them in the call box till so many minutes, an hour later, whatever it is,
Yeah,
you
well,
gotta
most
have that
everybody has
box
somebody
called.
grading them right along
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
If it's me, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna lose my crabs,
Yeah,
you know, so we're expeditiously going through them.
crading them so you get them up right side up in the baskets and all that kind of stuff, yeah. And so the point is that it may be that what would work, and I don't know the number to put on it, is to say from within so many minutes of putting it in the call box, then you have to have them called, or you have to be actively calling them.
Yeah, well, I don't know how you put some minutes on it. All you have to do is eliminate that word immediately
Yeah,
and put it in a reasonable amount of
or
time, or
promptly
something
or
like that.
something. Yeah. Pick a better word.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion that we move the dog sponge law to June first from June 15th.
Second that.
Got a
Just-
second?
In the sanctuary, outside sanctuary.
Well, sanctuary's closed, you can't be in there anyway. So,
Any other discussion?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
I wanna make a motion to move the dog sponge law back from June 15th to June 1st.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Got a second?
Ain't wrong with that, yeah.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, unanimous.
And the public?
Yeah, does anybody from the public wanna chime in? Yep. Moving along.
Corey, do you think that'll take care of that problem that I was talking about?
Pete, that's a whole different ballgame, in my opinion, because I mean, like where you're working, for the most part, when you're catching that many male crabs, you're not out here with these sponge crabs and all, we're
Well,
grading
the
in a
thing
couple
about it
different
is,
ways.
I work down
I
there
think
far
that's
enough.
something that we need to maybe get a little bit of feedback from staff on the way the code or the regulation is exactly written, and then we look into that at our next meeting. That we can know exactly how it's written up, and then we can tweak from there.
With
That's
some
my
input
opinion.
from.
See, I work down the river far enough that I'm, you know, one end is all the way up at the up.
No, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree, but I would like to see exactly what that rule is and what we need to tweak to make it.
Corey's right, it is a separate issue, but something we can address.
Well, damn, I've been
We can't
asking
get it
for this now for a year and a
So
half.
let's get it on the next agenda, and that way we
Well,
have
that's
some
what
specific
Spencer
time to
told me
walk
last
on,
meeting.
work on it. So we'll get it on the agenda, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair,
That's fine, that's
for
all
the
we
next
can do, I
CPAC
guess.
meeting.
That's what we've been doing with a lot of issues, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of issues.
All right.
That'll solve part of it, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're making progress.
All right, that's the number 3.
All right, so, at our last meeting, we were gonna talk about, Mark had some requests for sanctuaries around Lynn Haven. So, figured sanctuary images be good enough to start. Mark, do you wanna?
Yeah, originally, what I was shooting for is to try to get the oceanfront open in order for us to work. You notice in the Lower Bay, Area 2, it's not like Area 1B or 1A, you can go in the bay. So what we were looking for is to get some of the pressure off of Lynn Haven. Since then, I've talked to the guys that actually crab in the river where I'm at, and we decided probably the biggest bang for our buck would to just let the oceanfront go and basically ask for the Lower Bay Sanctuary to be open until June 1st, you know, which honestly, I'd like to see the Middle Sanctuary open until June 1st also, but that's here and there at this point. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And the reasoning behind that is, if you go back and you look at a study that was done in 2003, I'm sure you were author on about sanctuaries and corridors, et cetera. And the data shows clearly, now granted it's old data from 1995 through 97, it shows that the majority of the crabs in the Lower Bay didn't actually get there until, on one chart, until July. But it showed the mid-sanctuary, it actually had a greater number of crabs. And also, the larger majority of crabs were in 10.7 meters of water, and we don't crab that deep down there. we're down inside the fish traps, the water depth at the very most of the heads are about 22 to 28 foot of water. The further down you go, if you get a blow, you're gonna lose your pots. So we don't even go down there towards the latter, Cape Henry, because of that. So I feel, we're not really hurting anything. You're talking about 3 individuals that, we just wanna get pressure off Lynn Haven. Because you know as well as I do, anything you do in Lynn Haven, people get upset. They don't wanna see commercial activity in there. We're just trying to get away from all that and take the pressure off of it, is what we're looking for. So, we're looking to have the sanctuary open until June 1st, like it was pre-2008. Or actually, it'd be 2010, because you couldn't close it down.
And what area is that again, Mark?
It's going to be the historical sanctuary 2.
The one in code.
Yeah, the one in Cove. But, and you've got the ability to do that, because the first year, you couldn't close it down because you didn't have the authority. You had to go to the General Assembly. Since then, the General Assembly has granted the commission the ability to change the dates on the historical sanctuary. So you could make that open all year round if you wanted to, according to code.
But you wanna go again till June?
I like to go to June 15th. I think it's a good compromise to go to June 1st. Similar to 1A, which is open till June 1st.
Okay.
And if anybody, feels that they need the middle sanctuary open, that's, I don't have a problem with going to June 1st on that either.
From having to advertise, you guys gotta go through new,
I don't think you have to advertise it.
no, they have to go through a new process to change regulations. We have to do, maybe it'll get changed in January when we get to divide it, but we'll see. We have to get approval before you can even advertise to change the regulation. When do you have to do something so you can get that to be in place in March?
So the time between the commission approving a regulation, the commission approving a regulation and the changes going into effect is still the same. So,
But I thought you had to get, before the commission could change a regulation, you had to get
Well,
approval from somebody in Richmond to.
the time for staff to prepare an item for commission is longer. But
Okay, that's like 45 days minimum now, isn't it?
I don't think I can speak to where that is right now.
You gotta factor at least 2 months.
All right, well, does anybody have any thoughts on this here at the table amongst us?
There is a member of the public,
All right.
when we want to get there.
Swing back to the member of public. Yes, sir.
I've been listening to y'all, I attend a lot of your meetings. I'm a recreational crabber. I've been crabbing since I was 12 years old. My pots are approximately a half a mile off of my pier. And probably for the last 2 or 3 years, I had the luxury of having a spot for my own. And then one commercial crabber came in beside me, 20 yards off of me. The following year, 2 other commercial crabbers came in, and that's fine. My point is this, I have TEDs on my pots. They don't have them, and I can understand if they got 100 to 300 pots, that's a lot. But it's hard to keep up with 5 because it deteriorates and the rings come off. But what I'm more concerned with is, these are all commercial crabbers. You talk a lot about recreational crabbers, but there's not one commercial recreational crabber on your board. And I know, Tom, I know you.
Oh, you're talking.
You have crab pots? Okay, anyway, I heard some of the comments about the recreational crabbers. They don't take care of their pots. They don't check their pots. Maybe there's a number of them that do. I check my pots every other day. I bring them in, I power wash them, I take care of them, so I'll kind of take offense to that. But I'm sure there's those that don't take care of the pots. But I'd like to see some more representation on this panel other than just Tom.
Okay, so with regard to the area 2, you don't have any comment on that at this moment?
No, I do not.
Okay, all
You
right,
don't even have my area up
Okay.
there.
okay. All right, thank you, sir, appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
Area 1B, I was crabbing there the past 2 years through May 15th and had to leave with a pot full of mostly silks and sponge crabs because it was time for that to close. When we had to leave there, I have to go into working out of Reedville. We're going home and we're working into the creeks and all where we're catching the male crabs, peelers and all. I mean, I know we've said this before, we're moving one problem from one area to another. But if we're looking at doing this on 2, I think we should look at doing it in 1B as well. It was 5 or 6 of us there that all had to do the same thing. And they're going up there where these females are first getting their chance to mate, and we're going on top of them because we don't have another option with the sanctuary closing and getting in tight shore. We're working in the mouths of these creeks and right outside of them. So if this is something we're gonna throw on the table, I'd like to see it for 1B as well.
All right,
You know, there was a discussion in the paper I'm referring to about that issue, and, you know, do you remember the last paragraph of that paper that you wrote about the possibility of having problems with the tributaries and over, basically over Hogston?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have displacement.
So you have to look at
happening.
the 2, and I can tell you right now, in Lynn Haven, that's the crab that you really want to protect. And I go in there, and I work on females now. I mean, I'm caught them all the way up to Virginia Beach Boulevard, past Steinhiller's, you know where I'm at, a pot full of queen sooks that never had a chance to migrate down into the bay to actually have the first spawn because of this sanctuary thing. So in essence, I'm kind of helping that a little bit, protecting the crab that you want to protect. So I don't see an issue by moving the date to June 1st as a closure in that area. You have a problem with it, but we're only talking 3 crabbers. There may be some others coming in, but the reality of it, you can't even tie a boat up in Lynn Haven anymore.
So
Try to go get a slip for a commercial boat in Lynn Haven and see what they tell you. I can tell you right now, they're gonna tell you no. That's why you don't have a fish house there anymore, basically, is what it comes down to. You know, so you're gonna penalize me, and you're gonna cause me to catch a crab that says right in your paper from 2003, we really should look at this problem, but yet we're ignoring that problem, and we're doing a feel-good thing by saying, no, we're gonna shut you down to 15. 3 individuals, less than 1,000 pots in an area that's huge, and I'm talking just below the bridge. You know, that is minimal compared to the rest of Chesapeake Bay. You know, this is less than 1% of any, we couldn't, I tell you what, you can leave that open year round, we would never hurt that, ever. We have got bushel limits. To me, honestly, we should open up all the areas till June 1st. We've got bushel limits. Your data up there showed there's less crabbers this year. That, and it seems to me like there's a trend of people getting out of it. You know, so 15 more days, and actually it's not even 15. I mean, what, 12 days, 14 days, that you're gonna allow me to go to work? Or you're gonna shove me up in a river and catch a crab that's more valuable for spawning?
yeah, you make an interesting argument.
You know, this is feel good,
Yeah,
is what this
Well,
is.
that's been my argument all along.
It's a feel-good.
You know, it's overnight, there's no one in the rivers, and then the day comes and poof, they're all there.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna catch every female I can, because I have to make a living. That's what I do. I don't sit behind a desk and ask for grant money. You know, hey, believe me, if I could, I would.
All right,
But anyway, I'd like to make a motion to open all sanctuaries till June 1st. And, go with that. Excluding, I tell you what, excluding the area off Virginia Beach 3 and 4, close that year round. Would that make you feel better?
No, we haven't done any kind of.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that's a motion.
I'll second that.
I'll say.
all right, any discussion? I see Ron might have a few words to say.
I just wanna clarify, the motion includes excluding 3 and 4?
Sure.
Does it also include having those closed year-round?
Yeah, close it year round.
Hold on, Mark, are you saying that, closing 3, 4 year round, I mean, is there a reason to have that, or just,
It would be an offset, I think.
okay, okay,
It would be
I understand.
giving
Yeah, okay.
back.
Right, I understand.
All right, we have a second, but let's, before we make a vote on it, let's hear from Ron.
Well, just, we haven't examined this at all. We,
So-
we
No,
don't
no, no,
have, let me just finish, that we don't look, the data on the depth related, that's for the whole sanctuary. Down there is different than the rest of the sanctuary, the historical sanctuaries. A lot more females are down near the shallows and that, but I wouldn't be able to come to any kind of judgment either way unless we had the opportunity to actually look at the data. The problem with 3 and 4 is that there's very little information on 4 in particular.
Well, no,
And
close
that
that year
doesn't,
round.
and that doesn't come in, I'm just saying, we don't know how much that would save, because all the surveys we have, including the winter dredge survey, do not go out there to 4. They might hit parts of 3 maybe, but, so meaning that the reference points we use, everything is based on 1A, 1B, 2, and the tributaries and such. So, to come up with a number for 4 would mean a brand-new study to try to figure out how many crabs are out there. The only thing I can tell you is that when we did, one year, we did a survey out of 3 and parts of 4 in the deeper areas, in the dredge areas, or dredge disposal areas, and there were very few crabs out there. That's during the wintertime. So the problem I have is we were willing to go along with opening, say, 4, because number one, it doesn't go into, we're not using that information at all. When we measure the spawning stock, it's what's in 1A, 1B, 2, and the rest of the main 7 trips of the bay. And so we don't have any information by which to judge what kind of compensation you get from closing on 4 and then opening up 2. And also, too, we'd have to go back, I'd have to go back and reanalyze the data that we have for 2 to see if you get the same results. That is, that a 10.7-meter contour deeper than that is 75% of the crabs. You know? So, and we never considered opening 2, parts of 2 at all. So we would have to go back and reanalyze the data for that, and also know that we wouldn't have the information for the compensation by 4. That, we just don't have it.
Corey's wanting to speak. Ron?
Now, if we were looking at this as Mark's motion stands, as 1B and 2 being open until June 1st. I know in 1B, typically, we're somewhere between 8 and 15 of us that stay there until May 15th in the area that I'm working, which is, say, New Point on up to the mouth of Rappahannock, varies year to year. But you got 8 or 15 of us that have to leave and go to pretty much working tributaries for the next few weeks, and that's during the first part of the first female shed, you know, when they're first getting their chance to mate. And I'm sure it's the same thing with Mark. Would the pressure that we take off of those smaller, more concentrated areas, and it may be a smaller amount of crabs, but you got more pots in smaller areas, would that somewhat be offsetting if we were allowed to stay out in the sanctuary for those 2 weeks?
That's something we'd have to look with staff. Staff would have some of that information. I just want to remind you, the blue crab population in the bay, the spawning stock, relies about 80 to sometimes as high as 90% on females that are about to spawn for the first time. And so the females that are down after the winter, down in the lower bay, most of those females, 80 to 90%, have never spawned. They're about to spawn for the first time. And so we rely on that. So that's why there's been so much interest to protect as large a fraction of those as possible, right? They're already there.
I don't agree with that statement, and the reason why is because if you notice over the last 10 or so years since the closure of the sanctuary, we've seen a decrease in the female size. And I attribute that to the fact that we're catching the bigger females that are up in the lower salinity areas. And so, in my mind, those smaller crabs that we're catching are just not the first spawners. I think they're the ones that get out of our call rings that go on out in the bay.
No, you're right about the smaller size, but the reason is for the culling. The crabs in Maryland, that from our surveys up there, they're not.
I'm just talking lower bay. I'm not talking
I know,
about
what
these
I'm saying
sanctuaries.
is that what's happening as you go from the Tribs or Upper Bay down to the main stem is because of the cull ring laws and so on, that the larger females are getting caught and we're getting smaller crabs down in the Lower Bay. Exactly as you're saying, that's what's happening. They are on average smaller, but in all the studies that we've done recently, that's not having a huge effect on the spawning stock. Most of the spawning stock is based on abundance. And so the reproduction, the output that we're getting from it, and we haven't seen any genetic basis for minimization, meaning the crabs are not becoming genetically smaller. Because if you go up to Maryland, then before they ever leave there, their size hasn't changed.
Right, but ours has.
Yeah.
Especially down in the lower bay.
I mentioned years ago about snake bleeding, you still don't believe we're doing that with Colby. I said that,
It
when that
has-
first came out many years ago.
It
we argued about that.
hasn't shown up in terms of what's happening up in Maryland. Now, more recently.
Do they have cull ring?
No, what I'm saying is that's exactly the point, that the ones up there are large, right? And then they're getting culled as you go down, but if there were a genetic basis, then those females up in Maryland would also be smaller over the last, 40 years.
It's been that way forever. Crabs in Maryland's always been bigger than Virginia. It's been that way since I was a little kid. It's
I
always
know,
been that
because they're getting culled, because the large ones
Or
are
the
getting.
salinity level is a bigger factor than the cull rate. I think salinity level is your leading factor in size, just like in the Carolina crab.
So
All right, hang on,
definitely,
let's
but-
stay,
We're
let's
off
stay,
track.
stay,
We're off.
stay where we started out, which was Sanford's desire to, take 2 and move to June 1, then you added on to go to 1B. And then you made a motion to do that, those 2 things, and then
And I second the motion.
get, I understand, we're not gonna harvest any in 3 and 4, is what you said.
Correct. As a give back.
Does anybody have any discussion on that? Mr. Moore?
Maybe a couple. First, we still have time, we still have time to do this before next session, or before the season starts. So we can obviously think about this some more, let Ron run the analysis. The other thing, Joe, are we gonna, I know it got delayed, but are we gonna have the stock assessment results back in time for making adjustments this spring?
No, we probably won't have the final product until at least June now, is what we're being told.
Okay.
So what'll happen is we'll have to go ahead and do our regulatory process in June to set the season starting July 5th. And then from late summer and the fall, we're probably gonna be having meetings with y'all regularly to talk through the stock assessment and what's gonna come from that. But we won't have it in time to make any sound judgment before we have to
For the June-
enact the July
To July.
5th thing, yeah. So the timing's off, we can't help that, the shutdown affected that, pushed everything back. But, so late summer and fall is when we're really gonna be digging in stock assessment results.
The peer review is scheduled for April, and then it takes time for the final report to come out after that.
Okay, any further discussion
Well,
from
just,
Mr. Moore?
we've talked a lot, tonight about things we want. I think we need to remember, we're still not in a great condition with this stock. And, we're kind of biting this, we're kind of biting that, here and there. And everything we've talked about is increasing harvest in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, it's not gonna match up great for this season with the stock, when the stock system comes down at maybe making this decision. But I think we need to maybe be a little more cautious about changes
Yes, sir.
I somewhat agree with you, Chris, but we're not really talking about adding into our catch. We're moving our catch from, say, one group to another, staying out in that sanctuary for 15 more days compared to going up into the tributaries, catching those females and jimmies as they're first getting ready to do their first mating for the season. So I don't know that we're really increasing the harvest. Essentially, if anything, you're spreading your effort out more than having us confined in a smaller area. Adam, Joe, if we were to look at doing this, is there some way we could have another CMAC meeting where we table this motion for now, for you all to get some info, Ron, you as well, and us still be able to talk and say we make a motion and get it to the commission in time before things would need, because it would need to change, I guess, May 15th, is when the action would need to be done before.
April commission meeting.
I've got just a quick question. With the historical sanctuary, does that require legislative action?
Did they change it?
Not to change the date.
No.
No?
It lies with the commission now. Yeah, they changed 709. We can at least get another CMAC meeting.
That would still give enough timeline to
Yeah,
do the
if something comes out of
publications and
that-
everything, and
Yeah, we can still get another advisory committee meeting in sometime in the first couple months of 2026.
And there's also a lot we can take from these discussions and consider as tools. So based on what comes out of the stock assessment, we can say, if this is how we have to react, we already know what CMAC would like to see.
Mr. Thacker?
Yes, sir.
So one other thing to consider is that we would have information from the DRED survey sometime around April, early May.
but that's gonna be too late.
Where that could potentially inform this topic, this issue.
But that would be too late as far as the legislative process, because you'll need basically 2 months to advertise it before commission meeting. So if you had even the 1st of April,
Yeah.
it'd be too late.
Yeah, and usually the results don't go public until mid to late May, which is just before our CMAC meeting for the July 5th.
So again, you're talking about pushing people into a smaller area, and I understand that. But what I look at when I start thinking about those kind of things is, well, won't your catch per unit effort on an individual basis, because you're all crowded into a smaller area, go down as compared to when you're spread out, you can spread your year out and all that, and it's the catch per unit effort for the same number of people out there making a day every day, that if that goes down when you go into these smaller areas, which I would expect it would, and it really is not a good thing that it does as an individual, but from a crab population standpoint, your catch per unit effort for the same number of people working every day, going down is a good thing for maintaining the population to allow them
But
to.
you also got to
Well,
look
Tom,
at
you're correct, but what we're catching out in 1B and 2 is not have the market value as a peeler, soft crab that has just mated, or a number 1 jimmy that's in there looking for it.
Yeah.
So your catch per unit effort, you don't need to catch as many crabs in there to make the same money. Do you understand
Yeah,
what I mean as far as
understand
that
that,
goes?
but now
So
you're
yes,
saying you wanna go out into the high volume area.
It's
It's
not-
not value by working in the 1B.
That's
But you
not
also
the
gotta look
same.
at the value of the crab. Like
You're looking
me,
at
I
the
can
value
tell
of the
you-
crab, not
No,
just.
no, I'm talking just.
I don't
the
mean just the
spawner
money
potential.
number. You're looking at the spawner potential as well, and that's what we
That's,
both
I'm
have
looking at
said.
spawner potential. If I took you up the river and showed you the crab that I caught up there all summer long, and then I take you out in the bay and show you the crab I catch there, you'd understand where I'm coming from. I'm catching big female crabs, okay, all summer long. Really, honestly, it's a poor crab. They're great for spawning, but they have no meat in them. They don't have what my clientele want. They don't have the eggs in them at that point. But they have the greater spawning potential is what I'm looking at. You know, and I work on them all summer long, period. So you gotta kind of balance it. And to me, what I'm suggesting is a balance.
Core,
Do we have to vote on Mark's motion since he had a second?
Unless
There-
you.
Can I make another
I can
motion?
withdraw it.
You could do a substitute motion, and if it
All
goes
right.
second, it wins.
May I do a substitute motion that we table this to a CMAC meeting that will fall in after the first of the year, but give us enough time to, if we make changes, that it will get to the commission by the April commission meeting. That match
That's fine.
regulatory timeline? Okay.
And I'll agree to that for second, whatever I have to do.
To give staff and FIMS and all time to get some more
So,
information. to get
or you could withdraw your motion and he could do that.
Yeah, whatever needs to be done.
If you do it this way, we have to vote on the
Yeah, I'll withdraw
substitute
mine.
and vote on the motion.
All right. Is any other discussion on this, and can we vote on the substitute motion,
Are we
which is
gonna have a
essentially
record of that motion?
being seconded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need a
Oh,
second?
you mean,
He,
I can do
the
that.
Newland motion effectively was the second, he said he would be amenable to that. So
all right,
in
if
favor?
you wanna give me a moment, I can type it up. All right, Corey, does that reflect your motion?
Looks like it's pretty good.
All right, that way we're all voting on the same motion.
All right. All in favor of that? Aye. All right, any nays? Okay. All right.
All right, moving on to our next item is the license wait list. So several watermen on the wait list asked the commission to reinstate their licenses as public comments at commission meetings earlier this year. The commission requested CMAQ discuss it, and at the May CMAQ meeting, the committee voted to defer the discussion until after the stock assessment results are out next year. The commission later got another request and asked for CMAQ to discuss it again. So we're just revisiting that decision from May. So, brief history, in 2008, the blue crab fishery disaster was declared. Overcapitalization, overfishing, latent effort were identified as issues to be addressed. This is the regulation that states who would be put on the waiting list and at what time they would come off the waiting list. That was set as when the abundance is 215 million age 1+ or adult female blue crabs have been attained in 3 consecutive winter dredge surveys. And as you can see, we have not achieved that. So 215 million adult female blue crabs was the initial target from the 2011 stock assessment. A later stock assessment revised it down to 196 million crabs, so that 196 million crab adult females is the green line. So we've only exceeded that in 2 years. So the 215 would be even above that. This is the current status of the wait list. There are 63 licenses for hard crab pots on the wait list, 25 for peeler pots, 88 total. And those 88 belong to 71, are from 71 individuals, because some do have hard crab pot and peeler pot licenses. The original wait list was 867 licenses. That has decreased. There were some exceptions made for people who dredged during the qualification period. The buybacks from after the 2008 disaster. Some watermen are no longer active. They no longer have their commercial cards. Some have passed away, and some have transferred into the fishery later on. And this is the latent effort of the current wait list. So this is how many of each license categories are on the wait list and how many pots that represents. So if all hard crab pots came off the waiting list, for example, that would be about 11,000 more pots in the bay. So that would be an increase about 7%. Active peeler pots could increase by 15%. And as was mentioned earlier, we are seeing trends of decreasing activity in both the hard crab pots and peeler pot fisheries. That's the green line, which is the percentage of people eligible for a license who are actually reporting harvest.
Can you go back just a second? Do you have a feel for the total number of pots that we're talking about for hard crabs and peeler crabs for these two lists, for this data? Is it 7% increase on top of what we already have in number of pots or number of individuals? And 15% in number of pots and number of individuals?
Pots. Are you good with this, Tom? Or are you still looking?
Yeah.
Okay. So, wanted to put out potential options just as a starting point for discussion with the committee. So I'll turn it over if anyone has questions or wants to discuss the issue.
All right, anybody, Mr. Moore?
I mean, I think we've talked about this a lot. I think we made a well thought out decision when we said we would reevaluate it when stocking the sim comes out. I think it's important, there are transfers allowed. I mean, there are options for people to get in the fishery, as you said. The number of people actually actively participating is down, which means there's probably some licenses out there to be sold. I don't see making a change to what we had previously decided this time, knowing that we're 9 months out from stock assessment.
Yes, sir.
I agree with him 100%. You know, I think we made a great decision on that for now. And like Chris said, I mean, there are licenses for sale day in, day out. My stuff was taken from me because I was working in Louisiana at the time, and I had to work my way back into it, buy everything back that I got. They've had that option since 2008. If they wanted to get into it, that option is still available. So I think we stick with what we got.
Yeah, especially since we've got crab pot limit restrictions and barrel restrictions, quota. I think that's important to note that also. But, yeah, I'm like Corey. I think everybody had an opportunity to get back into the fishery if they wanted to.
It's still available.
Yeah, and still, yeah, if you wanna go pay $30,000 for a license, but it's there.
Yeah, well, it's a business, you gotta pay to play, as far as I can tell.
Yep.
Tom?
So a few comments. First off, I agree that we shouldn't do anything until the stock assessment comes in 9 months. So this is something for next year. And when staff does want to consider this, what I worry about is people saying, great, I got a license, $30,000, it's yours. And it gets it, not from somebody who historically was in the fishery and wants to get back into it, but somebody who wants to pay money right now to get in. And it will drive down that $30,000 because supply and demand.
They're not 30 anymore.
Yeah, okay.
With what's going on in the market the past couple of years.
Yeah, well, whatever, okay, so they're $5,000 or $10,000, whatever, it'll drive down the price of somebody who wants to get out, which I still think that we shouldn't be doing that, that's a whole nother matter. But, so if you were to allow it, it would have to be with no transfers, and then the agency, we still have a very limited number of people who can work as an agent, so we don't increase that as part of the deal. But that I wouldn't do that until after the stock assessment, because I look at your graph of female stock biomass, and it's not recovering. I mean, we had a couple years where it was real good, and then it just back down to almost as bad as, can you put that back up? It's almost as bad as it was when it was depleted. It's not going up that much. It's 20% above where,
I'm glad you mentioned that, and speaking related to this, me and Pete's been here many, many years, pay attention to me. And in that period of time, those many, many years, we've passed many, many, many regulations. I got a damn book this thick full. And would you just get through saying, it don't look so good? Well, we've done regulations for 25 damn years and they ain't helped none.
Yeah, the fishery is overcapitalized. I mean, it's been that way
Glad you
since
said that.
they put in the peeler pots without taking anything else out.
I believe it's because they can make that line wherever they want.
Well, I do remember way back, this way back, Pete may remember this, but way back, that green line, I heard so much about many, many years ago, was down below 200. That was raised up. Go back and check.
All right, let's hang on, let's
They
just,
raised that line up.
Okay.
I know nobody wants to hear that, but that's fact true. The green line was raised.
let's stay with where with this.
I had to make a comment, I ain't said
No
nothing yet.
problem, no problem, the crab pot transfers.
I'm just
Do we
stating
really
facts.
wanna do that? Let's stick to that. Good.
Stick to the facts.
Wait.
Stick to it.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I agree, I hear what you're
You're
saying.
in a hurry to get home, I
No,
understand.
no, I'm not in a hurry to get home, but I think it's better for us to stick to what we're supposed to do.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, you can let Corey,
I would
go.
like-
he hasn't
No,
had a chance.
no, I was more scratching my head.
Okay,
okay,
Well-
I would like to make a motion just to kind of put the transfer stuff on the table now for two. Is the motion would be that we wait until after the stock assessment and reevaluate it then.
Second.
Okay. All right, then we got a motion and a second to wait until stock reassessment to consider transfers.
Well, no, to consider even just allowing
The waiting
these
list.
licenses
Yeah, the
to
waiting
come back in.
Yeah.
And I agree, but on the other hand, it is down enough now compared to where it was when we started this stuff, that putting them on hold did what was intended at the time,
Okay, all right,
to reduce the latent effort.
all right.
And
So we
it
got,
may be time to let these licenses become active again, assuming the stock assessment doesn't come back and say, oh my goodness, look at this.
okay. All right, so we got a motion and a second, but any comments before we vote? Ty, I know you've got something to say,
You don't want to hear it. They said the stock assessment was terrible last winter, it's the best spring we've had in I don't know how many years.
All
so.
summer.
No, that was a summer dredge, a winter dredge, that wasn't the stock assessment, which is a broader
I'm just saying, y'all
study.
go by that like it's the gospel when we saw the exact opposite, so that's why we had doubts.
So part of what we're excited about with the stock assessment, it's using a lot more data, a lot more surveys going into it. They're looking at all sorts of things to try to put in predation, physical oceanography, temperature, salinity, oxygen. So it won't, it's not just this survey says this.
How many less watermen is it now than 15, 20 years ago? I know it's a ton. You have that number, like active?
That's way down.
You know, you talk about overcapitalization, nobody wants to do this anymore. It's too much BS and money involved.
Vote.
Yeah, let's have the vote then. All in favor? Any nays? Okay, all right, sounds good. Alexa, should we hear from the audience if they have concerns that we haven't addressed today?
We have a section, are you talking about for the wait list or for in general? We do have a public comment item after our new business.
Okay.
So that'll be items not on the agenda. So the commission received public inquiry into resuming the pre-2008 pot limits. That's something the committee had also discussed, I think in terms of the waitlist discussion last time. So the agency wanted to bring the request before CMAQ for discussion. So, as I'm sure all you are aware, in 2008, all crab pot and peeler pot limits were reduced as part of a 34% reduction effort. What we have on the screen are the license categories, what the pre-2008 pot maximums were, the post-2008 pots, and then what the decrease was. So all of the hard crab pot limits decreased by 15%. The peeler pot limits, that's the 217, was reduced by 30%. So I looked at reported trips. This graph on the bottom axis is what the license category is. So the 85 pots, 127, 170, et cetera. The blue line is what the average number of pots reported fished was. And then the orange bar is what the maximum pots licensed were. So for the 85 crab pot license, on average, people reported fishing 69 crab pots per trip. And we know those numbers are a little touchy because a lot of people will just put, I have, my license category is 127. I'll just write down 127 every time, no matter how many pots were out. Just wanted to show what about people are reporting that they have out. And it is generally much lower than the maximum number of pots licensed. These are numbers we've looked at previously. When we reduced the pot limits, we didn't have output controls such as the bushel limits. So now we have bushel limits constraining harvest. So if we look at the summer limits, which are the high limits, and the spring-fall limits, which are lower, 88% of trips in the summer caught 75% or less of their bushel limit. 63% of trips in the spring and fall caught 75% or less of their bushel limit. So we left the 25% as sort of a cushion around that bushel limit. But what it shows is that a lot of trips are being constrained by something other than the bushel limits, or by the pot limits. Sorry, no, the bushel limits. Said that right the first time. So, in the summer, 12% of trips probably hit their bushel limit and stopped. The other 88%, with more pots out, they might be able to harvest more crabs.
What do y'all think of that? Does that make sense to what you all see out there? Or what you experience? How many times do you get a limit?
Just depends what time of the year it is, and where you're at.
Yeah, it depends on what you're targeting. I mean, if we're in the creeks and in the rivers, where at times we generally have to be, we're looking for number one jimmies and off-healer or soft crab, and that's got higher market value. You don't see as many of those per pot, but it still adds up as if you were catching
Okay.
a bushel,
Yeah.
30
Okay.
females in a pot.
Do you hear that, Alexa? Is that?
Yeah, and with you saying time of the year, I'm sure it's time of the year depending on where the crabs are, when and where the crabs are. But also with that spring and fall number being lower, that shows that more trips are being constrained by when the bushel limits drop. So, if the bushel limits stayed the same, what does the committee think about returning to the full pot limits? That's kind of the information we want to gather here today.
Sometimes you have to take consideration that if the female is $30 a bushel and the male is $60 a bushel, you target the male.
Right.
2 for 1.
Right.
So if you've got a limit of 20 baskets and you catch 20 females and you catch 10 males, it's the easiest. And a lot of things to take into consideration.
Corey?
I think this is something maybe we want to table until, y'all might shoot me for this, until after the stock assessment. I mean, I know we've talked about some things into some of the public, some of us that don't sit here and do this day in, day out, you may think we want more, which we're not asking for more, we're asking for these dark sponges, we wanna catch them instead of throwing dead crabs overboard, because we're seeing more than 10 or 12 through the pot. Having this sanctuary, we're moving effort, you can flip that any way you want, but that's what we're doing. This is something that could possibly increase harvest, and I'm not against potentially making more money, but sometimes more is less in our world.
Right.
So I think this may be something that we want to look at after we get our stock assessment, my opinion.
The last thing a waterman wants to do is work himself
I agree. I wanted to go back for a second to, you had the slide about how many pots were actually being fished versus what the license category is. Just for the folks who are crab there today, I mean, one of the things I think we hear at this community meeting a lot, and other watermen I talk to, is pot's $50 down now.
I'll buy 1,000 of them if you can get them for $50.
75. But I mean, I think, right, I mean, I think another piece of this is, I'm not sure folks want to put another 25 or 30 pots in the water nowadays just because of the fact that it's a very big investment. So,
They'll sit there and you, I don't know, you might get to catch more the next day. I'm not against it, but.
What are,
I just got a general question. I noticed some of the percentages, crab pots were 15%, peeler pots were 30%. Why was that? Why are peeler pots taking away 30% of the pots versus the hard crab?
do you recall?
I don't remember.
Joe, didn't we take, wasn't it 30% for every, I'm trying to remember, that was a long time ago, it was 08.
Yeah.
Wasn't it 30% for everything, and then we went back to 15%
Yeah.
of hard crab pots?
That sounds correct. I
Because
think
we wanted to
initially it
keep-
was 30 in the thing, but
Yeah.
we had reversed back with the hard pots.
Because we wanted to protect females,
Yeah.
so we said peelers, in most cases,
That was the next generation of no.
yeah.
And at that time, there was a lot of discussions about the peeler industry and what impact they're having that really couldn't get quantified back in the 08, 09 days. So yeah, that is correct, Chris.
What percent is it now? 3?
Yeah, so
That's a big deal.
follow up, I mean, how many peeler potters are there now? I mean, honestly, would it be a problem giving them
3%.
back? 15% equal out to the, I'm just saying, that it's just, you know,
You don't remember nobody peeler space anymore, we peeler space back in.
yeah, so, I mean, honestly, for fairness, I'm quite sure a lot of people are against
We
this,
had
but
peeler traps in.
it seems to me like peeler potters should be at least
Anybody know what a peeler
equal
trap
to
is?
the crab
Peeler
pot.
space is-
Looks like we've got maybe 170 peeler potters active.
How many peeler scrapers do we have? How many crab scrapers do we
Well,
have?
that's not any,
Same thing, it's the exact same
It's
thing.
not many.
Still catching crab.
so,
We can add that to the item when we bring this back up.
Yeah.
The motion is to do this after the stock assessment.
Yeah.
We can include peeler pot in the discussion at that time.
And that'll be 2 years ago.
All right.
Did the same.
Is that okay with it? Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna table the increase of the pot limit until the stock assessment. Is that what you all are too? Okay, and everybody's in favor of that? All right.
All right, that brings us to the end of
Stone crabs?
my agenda.
End of your agenda.
But we've got,
Stone crabs on the agenda.
Yeah, she's getting
Yep.
to it.
Oh, okay.
Give her a chance.
that's good, that's a ROM thing. I'm just trying to figure out how to get it up on the screen right now.
There you go. All right, Rob, podium is yours. Bring it home.
You can just scroll the wheel to advance, because that's now on
Okay.
so you can't see it here.
Okay, so this, hopefully it's gonna be more of a fun thing.
Yeah.
So it's actually a really exciting thing that Florida stone crabs, for us as scientists, and then I think also maybe for the fishery, that the Florida stone crab has arrived, and I believe from all the information I've gotten so far that it's here to stay. So what you're seeing here is, I had mentioned in a previous CMAC meeting about being on the lookout for stone crabs, and then Ty Barrington texted me, and that's one of his crew down on the bottom there in the green shirt, holding a stone crab that they caught in a crab pot. And he caught that off near Willoughby Spit, and then he sent us, and that's the crab now on top. That's the crab that we took a picture of that at Vim's. So we are actually still holding 4 live stone crabs there. They're doing very well. And so I just wanted to update you on what's happening. So This, to me, is a brand-new, exciting area, and like I said, something that might bring us together. So, how did you say?
The scroll wheel on the mouse.
Okay, I'm doing that, not doing anything, let me try this, that's not doing it.
Not in presentation mode.
The trick is it's a PDF.
Yeah, you just gotta scroll down to the bar.
Just.
There we go.
Okay. So what I've been doing since then, so we got the word out ever since we got the crabs and tide. And we got the word out, and then I've received a fair number of calls so far. And what we're trying to get is good documentation of where the crabs are. For most of these, we actually get a picture of the crab that really helps us to make sure that it's an actual stone crab. So here I'm showing you, it's not totally up to date yet, but this is where crabs have been reported. You can see a whole bunch of them right here near Willoughby Spit. There've been at least 2 or 3 off the Ocean View Fishing Pier, near Cape Henry down here.
I caught 5 down there, and I caught one last week in Lynn Haven.
Okay, yes, so there was, one was caught in an oyster trap cage in Lynn Haven, Long Creek. A whole bunch in Rudy Inlet, and a couple on Bayside Eastern Shore. So they're showing up everywhere, and these are all live crabs. So that's great in a sense for us. It's really important because it turns out that historically, if you go back, Cape Hatteras is a boundary, of what we call a biogeographic boundary or barrier. That is, south of there, you have primarily subtropical species. Like if you go to Albemarle, Pamlico Sound, you get subtropicals, and then farther south, tropicals. North of there, you get primarily temperate species. It's a big barrier primarily because of temperature. Part of it has to do with the Gulf Stream, but the main barrier has been temperature. And especially inside of the bay, the winter temperatures inside of the bay are much colder than along the coast. So we've seen a lot of subtropical species moving along the coast north, but not many actually making it into the bay and being able to overwinter. So this is a really, scientifically, it's a really important finding. It's basically the breaching of a biogeographic barrier. And so it's really exciting, and it came from you, the crabbing community. That's really exciting. So what we're doing now is we're continuing our sightings. We're setting up a website that's going to show all the locations. It's going to have links to all the photos. I actually have kept a catalog of all the photos that have been sent to me. That's where we really need your help to continue. How did you shift that?
Ron, do you think, will these crabs burrow, or you think they leave the bay as the water gets cold?
No, these are here. They're overwintering. We think they're overwintering inside the bay. Stone crabs don't move very much. So what's happening is they're coming in, we think, as larvae, probably from the south. And in the past, in fact, it's been documented 40, 50 years ago by VIM scientists that stone crab larvae were coming into the bay, but they never survived.
Okay.
And so they're coming in and surviving, and I think the earliest one we have that's documented is 2021, I believe. I have to go back to that. So we're continuing our studies. There's one of the documented ones on the seaside. I know there've been 2 or 3 others. Every one of these so far has been a large male. So and I've been told by one person that they have a photo of an egg-bearing female. That's really important to try to get that. The other thing we haven't seen at all yet are juveniles. I didn't look at what you were doing. Okay. Okay. So what we're doing is we want to continue the sightings, we're setting up the website, and we also want to begin a couple studies with the crabbing community on a couple issues that relate to the stone crab. We're gonna set up a guide for how to properly declaw the stone crab. So I think most of you know that the stone crab fisheries work by catching the crabs, pulling the claw off, they autotomize. If you do it right, they don't bleed. There's a plane at which they can autotomize. You keep the one claw and then put the crab back. There's only 1 or 2 states that allow taking both claws. That's not good because that's how they feed, you know, then they're left to eat worms or whatever they can catch. So the thing is to only take one claw off, and those are fetching, you know, $40 a pound. So I think it would be a really great additional resource for crabbers. The only other ones that are like that are the Jonah crab, a little farther north. Some people call it stone crabs up in Maryland, but those are actually Jonah crabs, yeah.
I was gonna ask you about that. Many years ago, there were potholes and drugs full of them. What happened to them?
They're up there.
No, I mean, in the early eighties, and I probably shouldn't have been doing it when I did, but we set crab pots off in December off of Chicks Beach. And they
Off
came
where?
back- Chesapeake Beach at the foot of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel.
Did a whole damn
And they
pothole.
came back full of Jonah crabs.
Bushels of pothole.
Of Jonah crabs, yeah. So Jonah crabs are more temperate.
What happened to them?
They're moving north. They, because of the warming temperatures here, a lot of species.
Oh, they warmed up a little bit.
So they don't like,
Hold off last year.
they don't like the warm water, so they're moving, a lot of species are actually moving farther north, the temperate species. Okay, so the other thing we're gonna put out is a guide for stone crabs, to how to identify stone crabs. This is a medium size, it's probably a young adult stone crab here. And let me get a better. Okay, you got the magic
Are you
touchers?
trying to advance slides? Are you trying to go to the next?
Oh, yeah. There's a good size stone crab. Whoops. Here's a medium-sized stone crab. So here's a nice little juvenile. Notice what they look like. They have that real clear spotting on them. And so that's a juvenile, and they stone crabs get up to about 6.5 inches wide. Whereas our mud crab that I'm gonna show you in a minute only gets up to about 2.5 inches wide, but they're the ones that are getting confused with juvenile stone crabs. I've gotten numerous calls telling me, hey, we've been catching these for years, but that's the Atlantic mud crab, which gets to be about 2.5 inches. There's another young juvenile stone crab. Here are the different color variances. It doesn't show as good here, but these are all stone crabs from South Carolina. And that's a brown one, that's a spotted one, and that's an intermediate one. So I've seen both of these here, both the brown one and the spotted one. So again, we're gonna put out a guide. This is the Atlantic mud crab. This is the one that gets confused with juvenile stone crabs. One of the main ways you can distinguish it is that Atlantic mud crabs have these very distinct spines, sharp spines. Stone crabs are flat.
What about the green crab?
Yeah, what are they calling green?
A green crab looks very different. You see here, you don't have the real spines along the side of the carapace. The sides here are all really flattened, whereas in the mud crab, they have nice sharp spines. Now, we're gonna again set up a guide for there are a few different ways you can tell apart. Again, another mud crab, this would look to a lot of people, these have looked like stone crabs, and I've gotten calls on them, but you can see with the spines, there are a couple other things you can see with the coloration. The mud crab, the dark color on the claw tip here goes all the way to the base, whereas for the mud crab, it's only here, and then this one also gets lighter. It has a big molar there. So, again, this is a juvenile mud crab, another juvenile mud crab. So, this is basically where we are. We're in the process, we want to work with a couple of crabbers. I've already talked to Ty a little bit, to Mark maybe, about doing this. And to basically get some funding, fisheries research grant funding that goes to the crabber, and a little bit to us to do analyses, to look at things like, for instance, if you catch stone crabs in a crab pot, does that reduce the catch of blue crabs? Or can we start some sort of a survey for stone crabs? That's the other part I'm really interested in. Using information from both the crabbing community and actually from the oyster restoration, the oyster spat catcher cages, oyster cages. We're gonna start sampling those actually in Lynn Haven.
I've seen stone crabs.
Because we have not, like I said, we have not seen sponge-bearing females nor juveniles yet. The juveniles typically inhabit oyster reefs, so our whole oyster restoration effort that's going on in the bay is likely gonna increase the abundance of stone crabs. And so that's about where we are now. We're excited, we're really excited to work with you, with the crabbing community on this, particularly in the lower bay, because they require high salinity stone crabs. So that's why we're not gonna see them up in Maryland, besides water temperatures are also
When
cold.
the blue crab spawns, the eggs go out and the larvae come back.
The blue crab females, they hatch the larvae go offshore and come back.
What do these guys do?
Stone crabs, typically, they'll stay inside.
So they'll lay the eggs, the larvae will be inside.
They'll hatch the eggs, and then the larvae typically will be retained, like the Atlantic mud crab, its larvae remain in the system, whereas blue crab
So if
larvae
we get
go
these things in
offshore.
If we get these things in Lynn Haven, as they start spawning.
It's possible that
Lynn Haven's a trap estuary anyway, so the chances of that.
it is, particularly Broad Bay and Linkhorn, and that Lynn Haven to me is like the perfect little
I've seen them in my oyster cage,
system for them.
but I just throw them out.
What's the stock assessment in the Carolinas? What kind of report you got?
What's that?
What kind of report you got from the Carolinas on this? In Carolina?
Yeah, they have a fishery for them. They've had it now for, many years.
How far south?
This is it. This is it. They don't go, like I said, this is the breaching of the barrier, and this is it. It's the farthest north that they are. The biggest fishery is in Florida stone crab. And then there are different species that goes along the Gulf. And then South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, they all have fisheries. Sometimes they add them to the regular crab fishery. So that's a new issue that we're gonna have coming on, where we can work together.
Young people have a fishery in a few years. Maybe.
It's not unlike the white shrimp.
Young people, I know it.
It's not like the white shrimp, it's like the white shrimp fishery, right? All of a sudden, we have a pretty active white shrimp fishery too.
Any questions for Rob?
The other thing I would ask you to be on the lookout for is lionfish. If you see any lionfish inside, those are the ones with those long spines and such. I haven't seen any of those reported inside the bay.
What about spot-tailed butterfly fish?
That's a tropical
I had them in saltwater tank 2 years ago.
Yeah, you used to catch more tropical fish in Rudy all the time.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
I kept them in my tank for about 3 months.
Nice, yeah. So that's where we are. We're gonna, the next step is we're gonna send out, first of all, if any of you catch them, it's great if you get a picture, or you can call us and we'll come down and get it from you. Ty would take his stone crabs and he'd keep them a pot, and he'd just keep them in one of his traps off a dock, and then we drove down.
Give us the number, Ron, so I can pass it down. You know, I give it to Ron.
Call Bibbs and ask for him.
Well, okay, so, 757-869-2717, that's my cell. And you can text me. I know, I was, okay. Ty already has it, and so that's how because that allows us, if you text me, then we can go down and pick up the crab. We'd love to get it live and so on. But definitely, if you don't keep it, if you can take a photo of it, the top and the underside, so we can tell if it's a male or female, that would be great.
You can also email it to me and I can forward it to Rob.
Remind me after midnight, I can tell you.
And my email is just rom@vims.edu. That's probably the easiest, because then you could email photos or whatever.
What'd you say?
Hmm?
Ron, what?
rom@vims.edu.
And you check that multiple times daily. As far as somebody, rather than calling, you just send them an email. You're not.
At least once,
You check.
at least once a day. Texting is better. You have a live crowd, texting's much better. And,
All right, anything else for the, what's next on the agenda?
Public comment.
Public comment.
I didn't get the bottom, that was.
Do we have any
Yeah, that was.
members of the public who would like to make a comment? Alexa, seeing none.
And then the next item is adjournment.
All right. Anyone else? Adjourn? Motion adjourned. So moved.
If anyone on the committee needs travel reimbursement forms, you can get them from Shakira over there, or you can email me tomorrow and I can get them to you.